A warm welcome to another edition of The World Today. I am Amarachi Ubani in Lagos. Here's what's coming up on the program. U.S. President Joe Biden issues full and unconditional pardon for son Hunter over his tax evasion charges and gun charges. President-elect Donald Trump describes Biden's actions as abuse and miscarriage of justice. Plus, Syrian opposition vows rebels will not stop fighting until the Syrian government is committed to the UN process and political transition. Let's begin The World Today. U.S. President Joe Biden has issued an official presidential pardon for his son Hunter, who's set to face sentencing this month on federal felony gun and tax evasion tax convictions. President Biden had previously said he would not pardon his son or commute his sentence. However, on Sunday evening, he said although he believed in the justice system, politics has infected this process and it led to a miscarriage of justice. The president's son, Hunter Biden, had pleaded guilty to tax charges in September and was found guilty of being an illegal drug user in possession of a gun in June. He became the first child of a sitting president to become a convicted person of a crime. It's common for presidents to issue a raft of pardons in the closing months of their presidency. Hunter Biden has reacted to the pardon, saying he would not take the clemency for granted. A president should pardon wife's convictions for federal crimes. Hunter says in his statement he had admitted and taken responsibility for his mistakes. He calls it an exploitation to publicly humiliate and shame him and his family for political sport. The statement further reads, I have maintained my sobriety for more than 5 years because of my deep faith and the unwavering love and support of my family and friends. In the throes of addiction, I squandered many opportunities and advantages. In recovery, we can be given the opportunity to make amends where possible and rebuild our lives if we never take for granted the mercy that we have been afforded. As expected, President-elect Donald Trump has also reacted to the recent presidential pardon, calling it an abuse and miscarriage of justice. He posed this in a comment on his social media platform, Truth Social. It reads, does the pardon given by Joe to Hunter include the J6 hostages who've now been in prison for years? Such an abuse and miscarriage of justice. The White House has said repeatedly that President Biden, now in his final weeks of presidency, would not pardon or commute the sentences of his son, a recovering drug addict who became a target of Republicans, including former President Donald Trump. Let's bring in our Washington correspondent, Maria Bird. Maria, I expect this news has raised eyebrows across the United States. Just the fact that the president had said he would not do this, and now he has. Could his decision, however, have been affected by the fact that Trump has been elected president?
Yes, this is definitely due to this most recent election cycle. The president had said, as you stated, that he would not do this type of clemency. I think there was an expectation that we would have seen the vice president as the president-elect. And so as a result of that, and obviously we're in the middle of the campaign season, and it was a very contentious and very controversial activity by his son, and obviously those charges that were brought forth against him. And so knowing that his son would be potentially a political pawn is really what he's looking at, is whether or not this was more about politics than the justice system. And so as a result of that, he has said that, after long thoughts about what will happen, and very likely that the president will no longer be in the political spotlight. And so he has no further political aspirations. So for him, this was really about what was doing best as a father. And then obviously looking at this from the political landscape as the president of the United States. So his thoughts are really around the fact that his son could have potentially been in further danger, and obviously could have definitely faced greater sentencing than what traditionally would happen for these type of charges.
Yeah, it does seem like before when he said he wouldn't interfere in the trial in any way, he was speaking as a president, and this time around he's speaking as a father. But does this mean that Hunter Biden is completely free? I mean, can the incoming administration regurgitate the case against him?
Yes. What this does mean is that the that he will not face any further trials in the future as it relates to these specific charges. Now, whether or not there's something in the future that happens, that is obviously something we cannot tell. But for these specific charges, the pardons cannot be rescinded by the incoming president or anyone else. And so this is clearing him overall for this. This pardon will clear him.
It almost seems similar, Maria, to the convictions against the incoming former President Donald Trump, and they were also recently quashed just because, he won the presidency. So, what sort of precedence is this setting in the U.S. judiciary system?
I think this is a precedence, but I do think that we have to be very mindful that this is something that happened, as you stated before, to all presidents as they end their political cycle, and specifically as they end their presidency, if they're not going to serve a second term. And so most presidents do pardon individuals, and they're normally very controversial pardons. I think that there has become a culture that people have really focused in as on the details of things. I think if you look back in history, you'll see other presidents that have pardoned, maybe not family members to this extent. Obviously, we've never before seen a president-elect that has faced the type of charges that the incoming president had faced previously. But I think that when you look at this pardon piece, I think it's just a fact that this is the president's son that's being pardoned. But traditionally, you will see individuals that have very controversial backgrounds that presidents will pardon.
I take it, of course, Republicans are not happy about the move. Hunter Biden's convictions were supposed to provide them some leverage, some entertainment, I would even suggest, against the Biden family and the Democrats. What have they said about this?
Yes, well, the Republicans are definitely, as you stated, probably not happy, but they're not surprised. I think that's the biggest piece is that there's no surprise that this would happen, even though the president has stated he would not do this based off of the culture and the climate of the politics in the United States. I think it's not a surprise. I think they knew that that was very highly likely. That the president would pardon his son, especially when we look at the type of charges he was facing, and them very clearly understanding that laws will likely change with the new administration. So that was something I think that whether they're happy or not, but I don't think there's any surprise there.
Yeah, and how and when are presidential pardons supposed to be used in the United States? And then what effects are they expected to have?
Pardons are used in the United States when it's almost an executive order by the president, when he feels as though there has been someone that has been wrongly committed of a crime. You've seen in the past where there are individuals that are sitting on death row for crimes that there has been tons of evidence that potentially would lead to the fact that the person did not commit the crime. And so oftentimes presidents will pardon those types of individuals. Typically, you'll see, that lawyers and advocates have been advocating for specific issues, for specific individuals for quite some time. We saw large pardons previously when marijuana was legalized in the United States for health usage, and for individuals that had been convicted of small use of marijuana crimes were pardoned previously. So typically it's around very controversial issues. Maybe times have changed, laws have changed, and individuals were incarcerated as a result of previous laws. And so oftentimes presidents will do that. But it's a very typical, you will see hundreds of individuals sometimes pardoned at the end of a president's administration. And it's something that's done based off of how they believe that potentially someone has been unfairly or unjustly, because we all know that the justice system has various laws in place, but I think people would say that it's not necessarily perfect. That's why we have the three forms of government in the United States, with congressional, the legislative branches, executive, and then the judicial branches.
So two voices we really haven't heard in this, and that's the reactions from the Democratic Party, as well as other Americans who still have some faith in Biden, hoping he would leave office in good stead.
Yes, the Democrats are probably going to stay away from commenting much on this. I think this is really about the president. This is about his family. And this is about what he believes is going to be best for him moving forward. And so you're not going to see Democrats really have much to say. Those who are in support might just be very short in commentary around supporting the president, and others will probably have no comment at all, because at this time, Democrats are really looking at how do they ensure that as we're preparing for this next administration, there are various laws and bills that are passed and put through before the makeup of Congress does shift.
Maria, thanks again for bringing us up to speed on this. We're sure there will be developments on what the president has done, especially when the incoming administration takes over. There will be fireworks, I'm sure of that. Thanks again, Maria.
Thank you.
So let's stay a bit longer in the United States. We're focused now on the incoming Trump administration. The president-elect on Sunday announced that Lebanese-American businessman Massad Boulos would serve as senior advisor on Arab and Middle Eastern affairs. Trump made the announcement on Truth Social. Boulos is the father-in-law of Trump's daughter, Tiffany. They met repeatedly with Arab, American, and Muslim leaders during the election campaign. It's the second time in recent days that Trump has chosen the father-in-law of one of his children to serve in his administration. On Saturday, Trump said that he had picked his son-in-law, Jared Kushner's father, real estate mogul Charles Kushner, to serve as U.S. ambassador to France. In recent months, Boulos campaigned for Trump to drum up Lebanese and Arab American support, even as the U.S. backed Israel's military campaign against Hezbollah in Lebanon. Boulos has powerful roots in both countries. His father and grandfather were both figures in Lebanese politics, and his father-in-law was a key funder of the Free Patriotic Movement, a Christian party aligned with Hezbollah. His son, Michael, and Tiffany Trump were married in an elaborate ceremony at Trump's Florida Mar-a-Lago club in November of 2022 after getting engaged in the White House Rose Garden during Trump's first term. In the meantime, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov has been commenting on Trump's threats to impose tariffs on BRICS countries if they create their own currency, saying that any U.S. attempt to compel countries to use a dollar would backfire. Peskov said the dollar was losing its appeal as a reserve currency for many countries, and the trend is gathering pace. Trump on Saturday demanded that BRICS member countries commit to not creating a new currency or supporting another currency that would replace the US dollar, saying they would otherwise face 100% tariffs. We head straight to the Middle East now, where a Syrian opposition leader says rebels would not stop fighting until the Syrian government commits to the United Nations process and a political transition. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan says developments in Syria show the need for the government to reconcile with its people and the opposition, and Turkey is ready to contribute to such a dialogue. Videos released by the Syrian volunteer group, the White Helmets, on Sunday showed blown-out buildings, we're seeing them there, and vehicles in a residential area of Idlib city, where they evacuated injured people into ambulances. Those images come on the day Syrian sources said that they had struck the rebel-held city of Idlib, the second day of intense bombing in northern Syria aimed at pushing back insurgents which swept through the city of Aleppo. At least 4 people were killed, dozens more injured, according to rescuers at the scene. In the meantime, Gaza health authorities say the Palestinian death toll from the ongoing Israeli attacks in the Gaza Strip has risen to 44,429, with 105,250 injured. A statement from the group says over the past 24 hours, Israeli military operations in Gaza have led to 47 deaths and 108 injuries. Gaza's government media office said on Sunday a journalist with the local Quds news network was killed in an Israeli attack on the besieged enclave, taking the overall death toll of media practitioners in the Gaza Strip to 192 since October last year. Well, Palestinian official news agency Wafa reported on Sunday that the Israeli army had launched attacks on the western part of Gaza, killing 5 people and wounding many others. A joint announcement by the Israel Defense Forces and the Israel Security Agency on Sunday said earlier in the day an Israeli Air Force warplane launched an airstrike in Jenin of the West Bank, killing a Palestinian army armed personnel. The Palestinian Ministry of Health confirmed that a total of 4 Palestinians were killed in the airstrike. Kuwait's Emir Sheikh Mashal Al Ahmad Al Sabah has called for a ceasefire in Gaza during the opening of the 45th session of the Gulf Cooperation Council in Kuwait. The summit comes several days after a U.S. and France brokered ceasefire agreement between Israel and Iran-backed group Hezbollah came into effect in Lebanon, ending the deadliest confrontation in years. Israel is still fighting on its southern front against the Palestinian militant group Hamas in the Gaza Strip. The council repeatedly affirmed its support for Lebanon during the conflict and called for an immediate ceasefire in the Gaza Strip. We'll stay with that ceasefire. Pope Francis has welcomed it in Lebanon, praying that it will be respected by both sides and will allow populations to return to their homes. Appealing to all Lebanese politicians for the election of a new president of the Republic, the pontiff expressed his hope that the spiral of peace that has opened can bring a ceasefire on all fronts, especially in Gaza, saying that war offends God and humanity. Pope Francis also prayed during the Angelus prayer, prayed the Angelus prayer for the victims in Syria and in Ukraine. Welcome back to the program. German Chancellor Olaf Scholz and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky have both reviewed military drones manufactured by Ukrainian and German producers that were laid out as an exhibition center at an undisclosed location. An unidentified speaker at the exhibition told the two leaders that one drone was Ukrainian manufactured but contained German artificial intelligence. The Chancellor unveiled 650 million euros of new military aid as he came to Kyiv, vowing Berlin would remain Ukraine's biggest backer in Europe at a volatile moment in the war, with Donald Trump set to return to the White House. The visit, his first to Kyiv since the early months of Russia's 2022 invasion, comes weeks after the Chancellor's governing coalition collapsed, setting him up for a tough battle for re-election at a snap vote in February. Scholz's record on supporting Ukraine has been under scrutiny from both those who want him to do more to help Kyiv and from voters who want Germany to pull back from sending weapons and aid to Ukraine. China has warned the U.S. against crossing what it calls a red line over Taiwan, urging it to stop supporting Taiwan's independent separatist forces. The remarks made earlier by Chinese Foreign Ministry spokesperson Li Jiang came after Taiwan President Lai Ching-te visited Hawaii on Saturday. Lai was making a sensitive 2-day trip to Hawaii as part of a week-long visit to allies in the Pacific. China has condemned the trip, saying it opposes any such transition transit stops by Taiwanese leaders on U.S. territory. Lai also held a 20-minute call with former U.S. House of Representatives Speaker Nancy Pelosi on Sunday, during which they discussed China's military threats. China claims democratically governed Taiwan as its own territory, a position Lai and his government reject, and has stepped up its military activities around the island in the past 5 years. A Canadian Trade Minister, Mary Ng, says a new trade agreement with Indonesia will foster greater predictability and stability in bilateral trade between the two countries. Indonesia and Canada signed a comprehensive economic partnership agreement today that aims to strengthen economic ties between the two G20 members 3 years after negotiations began. The agreement will take effect in 2026 and it was signed in Jakarta by trade ministers of both countries.
Canada trades $145 million a day with the United States. And in all of the businesses that I have talked to, both in Canada, but also Canadian businesses that are doing business in the United States and American businesses that do business with Canada, tariffs raises costs. It raises costs for their consumers and for those businesses. So businesses, businesses will be impacted. Prime Minister Trudeau takes this very seriously. He has met with President Trump very recently, and I think that what Prime Minister Trudeau has been able to do is to communicate effectively what we can be doing together. Areas that are important to Canada, also important to the United States around economic security is something that we will cooperate and collaborate with the United States on. Well, I think that the good news here is that Canada and Indonesia, in the negotiating of this trade agreement, means that we are creating a predictability of our trading relationship, bringing down tariffs, and also creating that environment that really enables companies to want to grow into this market.
It's been a fourth night of street demonstrations and a string of public resignations in Georgia, triggered by the ruling party's decision to suspend a push to start talks on joining the European Union. As tens of thousands of Georgians headed back to the streets of several cities, Prime Minister Irakli Kobakidze said they'd fallen victim to opposition lies, and he rejects calls for new elections. The Prime Minister insists the Georgian dream is still committed to European integration. However, an increasing array of public officials do not appear to believe that that is the case. Several ambassadors have resigned, and hundreds of civil servants and more than 3,000 teachers have signed letters condemning the decision to put EU accession on hold. 3 people have died, at least 32 more hospitalized in the Philippines after eating an endangered sea turtle cooked in stew. Dozens of indigenous Teduray people reported symptoms such as diarrhea, vomiting, and abdominal spasms since eating the dish last week in a seaside town of Maguindano del Norte province. While it is legal to hunt or consume sea turtles under the Philippines' environmental protection laws, the marine creatures are still eaten as a traditional delicacy in some communities. Sea turtles, however, consume contaminated algae, including those that appear healthy, can be toxic when cooked or eaten. Turning to Africa, now at least 56 people have died in Guinea following a stampede at a soccer stadium, the result of clashes between the fans. The Ghanaian government says it is conducting an investigation to establish those responsible for the stampede on Sunday. The stampede erupted in the packed stadium as security forces attempted to control clashes among fans. Prime Minister Amadou Ureba addressed the tragedy on the platform X, stating victims were recorded during the stampede, although did not specify the death toll, but also assured that regional authorities are working to restore calm to the area. The National Alliance for Alternation and Democracy, a coalition of political parties, issued a statement confirming that the disaster resulted in numerous deaths and injuries. The tragic event highlights ongoing challenges with crowd management and stadium safety in Guinea. November 20 every year is set aside to celebrate World Children's Day to commemorate the Declaration of the Rights of the Child in the UN General Assembly. Children's Day is also celebrated on May 27th here in Nigeria. The date of observance varies by country. According to UNICEF's Convention on the Rights of Children, every child has a right to live free from violence, exploitation, and abuse. It notes violence against children can be physical, emotional, or sexual, and in many cases, children suffer at the hands of the people they trust. Just recently, in a bid to protect children online, Australia's parliament passed a bill to approve the ban of social media for children under the age of 16. Let's talk about it then. Joining us now to help us further understand the rights to a child or a child's rights to protection is UNICEF Country Representative Christiane Munduate. She joins us from Abuja, Nigeria's Federal Capital Territory. Christiane, thank you for joining us on the program today.
Thank you so much.
And it is great to see you. I know we're having this discussion weeks since after the Children's Day celebration. Moving forward, however, what initiatives has the UN implemented here in Nigeria to help promote children's rights and protection? And what have you observed about the implementation of these legislation for children in the country?
Well, first, to recognize that the Child Rights Code is approved in in each one of the 36 states in the country. When it relates to the protection of children against violence, I think there's still a long way to go in terms of guaranteeing, on one side, the proper attention and support to children who have been victims of violence, different forms of violence, sexual violence, child trafficking, female genital mutilation, among others. And on the other side, how the legal system still has challenges in terms of the prosecution of the adults who have abused children. So that's on the child protection. But there are other rights that need to be guaranteed to children, and these are their social rights, their right to have health so that they can have the right to live, the right to education, the right to be, in well nourished, the right to nutrition, among others.
Yes, so I did ask about your observation, how this has been implemented here in Nigeria. What have you observed, since you're attaining, assuming the position of UNICEF country director in the country? Because it's very easy, to look at children on the streets and say, well, these ones they're not observing their rights. They do seem to have no rights at all because there are no adults around them to protect them from seeming harm outside. So what have been your observations regarding implementation of these rights?
Definitely. I think you touch on the critical part of what is children's rights. And children's rights should be guaranteed by all those adults who are part of the children context. So in terms of the street children, the majority of these children come from very poor households. And they are either put in the streets by their own parents, or they get lost, or they get trapped by illegal networks, or they just run off because of the misfortunes they have. So in these regards, I think there should be more efforts, right? I mean, we do what we can, but the points of extreme poverty and poverty are part of the main accountabilities of our country entirely. I mean, of course, the primary accountables to guarantee all this is the government, and the government, I say federal, state, and local level government, but also different sectors of society. Still, street children is a problem, but also we need to understand that in many cases, behind these street children, there are adults exploiting them. So they are sent to the street to beg. They are sent to the street to see whatever they can get. And unfortunately, then they are captured by these adults, and they have to give, whatever money they receive, etc. So this is on one. On the other side, you see street children that are completely in the streets. These are children that are mainly on, and very sad, are already trapped into the consumption of drugs, and they stay there and they live in the streets. But the other type of children that you see in the street, they are exploited by adults.
And I'm just wondering, Christiane, sometimes there are other children that we don't see, the ones behind closed doors, the ones who live in private families. How do you determine that their rights are being violated? Because I know that until recently, there seems to have been, more stories out there about children being violated behind closed doors. What rights do these have, and what can children who find themselves in certain situations like this, what can they do? How can they get the necessary help, and who's there to help them?
Yeah, well, here you are going into violence against the children, right? So one of the most common forms of violence is sexual abuse. And this is a very complicated issue, that both boys and girls who have been victims of sexual abuse, normally they don't denounce. On one side, because they don't know; on another reason, because there are no real enough mechanisms to do the denouncing, and on the third, because they're victims, and if they make this public, in some communities they are stigmatized by the situation of have been sexually assaulted and abused, or at times signaling them, and this is, so they become double victims. And this is something that, at community level, at household level, it needs to be understood that these children are victims, and it is not their fault if an adult sexually abused them. On the other side, many communities know who was the perpetrator, who was the person who, sexually abused these children. And there is a lot of permissivity. The communities become, as part of nourishing this type of actions. So it is clear that there is a legal system that needs to come in.
Right. And Christiane, I know that children are very curious. A lot of children are online these days, pretty interesting, on various social media platforms. There have been many fora discussing the protection of children online, what they're watching and so on. I mean, even Australia recently banned social media for children under the age of 16. Realistically, in these days that we live in, how feasible is this in a society like Nigeria, where a child has access, thankfully, to not just social media, but a lot of online presence, and they are exposed to a lot online. So how exactly can children be protected, especially children who live in communities where there doesn't seem to be any restrictions on social media use, on what is supposed to be child friendly, what is not child friendly, and all of that?
Yeah, it is very complicated. And well, the first thing, I think this is subject to more investigation, to collect more data, to analyze and to understand it. Because we can ask ourselves, how many children indeed who are very poor living in the rural areas have access to internet? At this moment, we as UNICEF, we are struggling to try to see how we can get, more coverage of internet to come in with the Nigerian Learning Passport, which is a modality to help children advance in their education. And what we see in those rural areas, that it is not easy to have the internet or even to have, the mobile phones to do this. I think part of these challenges in terms of access of on proper content for children is more a situation in the urban areas.
Christian, thank you again for joining us on the program, the UNICEF Country Director for Nigeria. Appreciate your time on The World Today.
Thank you. Thank you.
Well, staying with children, however, the first conjoined twins conference came to an end in Saudi Arabia on Monday last week. One of the side attractions of the conference was an exhibition hall showcasing tools and equipment dedicated to the growth and development of children, especially those with disabilities.
Out of cost because
while experts and professionals brainstormed on procedures and techniques to improve the separation of conjoined twins at the conference in Riyadh, next door, where the companies, organizations, and schools focused on their development and welfare throughout their lives. For example, like Hannah, a music teacher specializing in music therapy for children. She came with some of her musical instruments to show how music helps with child development. She teaches nonverbal kids how to communicate through music.
Without talking, we can communicate with music, with playing music, to socialize the kids. If they feel, for example, so we can't talk music.
We'll make a stopover at the King Salman Humanitarian Aid and Relief Center stand at the exhibition, where technology is used to show people what life is like for a child in one of the refugee camps in the Middle East. I'm in a refugee camp. I see children.
You see children? Okay, that's the start of the video. Yeah. This booth gives you the opportunity to wear the VR, to live in a day of a refugee Syrian child in the camp from when they wake up until they come back home. And you get to see what they do around the day, when they go to school, when they have breakfast, and that's basically what we're showing you.
Since most separated conjoined twins need physical therapy afterwards, the Children with Disability Association stand showcases productive tools that help with that, play, as well as other toys that help with cognitive development, so a child with disabilities can learn to do basic things by himself.
We are providing a service for rehabilitation from birth up to 16 years old. Occupational therapy, physiotherapy, psychologist, speech pathologist, special education. So as a rehabilitation for the all disability. As a free for Saudi, and for non-Saudi, we just take a small amount of service budget, but it's open for everybody.
Our final stop is at a replica of an operating room where conjoined twins are separated. OR nurse Majd Nafia shows how those complicated surgeries are conducted.
The patient will come inside the OR. It will be in one table. After separation, 2 tables different. After separation, inside the OR will be 2 anesthesia machine, separated the anesthesiologist. The team will be different. The anesthesia preparation is different between each other. We have sometimes a code team inside the OR. We call it a blue team and a red team. For nursing side, we have like maybe maximum 8 nurses inside the OR. 2 scrub nurse. 1 scrub will start the procedure. The other one will scrub after separation. We have 2 circulating, 2 documenting nurses. The instrument that we bring today is only the basic instrument. It depends also on what is the sharing part of the OR, of the separation.
Doctors say early separation is key to success. Saudi hospitals reportedly have 100% survival rates. This exhibition shows it is probably because there is a whole village of different professionals on standby to make it happen. From Riyadh in Saudi Arabia, Amarachi Ubani, Channels Television News. Many Nigerians in South Africa, however, struggling to obtain or renew permits. The visa application process can be lengthy sometimes. It's also expensive and complex in some instances, often leaving migrants in a precarious situation if their permits expire or are delayed. South Africa's immigration policies can change frequently, leaving Nigerians uncertain about the legal status of their stay. Now, as South Africa's President Cyril Ramaphosa co-chairs the 11th session of the Binational Commission between South Africa and the Federal Republic of Nigeria, with President Bola Tinubu arriving in Cape Town today, Nigerians living in South Africa hope the discussions will address what they describe as the inconsistent enforcement of immigration laws, which creates confusion and vulnerability. Here's our South Africa correspondent, Innocent Samosa.
South Africa and Nigeria are this year marking 30 years of diplomatic relations established in February 1994. Now, we do know that Nigerian President, His Excellency Bola Tinubu, is in South Africa for the Presidential Binational Commission. It is believed that Tinubu and Ramaphosa would hold substantive discussions on bilateral, regional and international matters of mutual interest. Now, Nigerians living in South Africa had this to say about their president's visit. What would you like them to talk about and to focus on?
Okay, I would like them to talk about the way we did not have permits in the country, because it really affects. Whenever you want to go out, you will be afraid to go out because the cops, whether they will come after you and all that. Like, since I came here, I have applied for my asylum. They gave me, and after a while they stopped. I've sent countless of messages to Pretoria Home Affairs, but no response.
The only thing we need to say to our leaders is to come together as one and put heads together. How Africa will move forward. So it's all about that. Somebody like me now, I'm a truck engineer in Nigeria, But when I came to South Africa, there's nothing I could do than to do this because I didn't have papers. So we are begging some of the African leaders. We are begging President Ramaphosa, most of African leaders, to come together.
Yesterday, I know how much I'll take back myself because of the paper, because they want to deport me from South Africa to Nigeria. And I'm here many years now. I'm supposed to have a citizen paper, nothing. So we are struggling for that paper. If they can help us with the paper, we will be happy.
So the working permit is the challenge, so you will need that to be fixed.
It's a challenge for us. That working permit is very challenging. We need them to help us, please. If they can help us with that, it will be okay.
Now, while that continues, there are currently 34 agreements and memorandum of understanding between the two countries, which covers a wide range of fields, including economic, technical, scientific, social, and also tourism, among others. From Johannesburg, South Africa, Innocent Samosa, Channels Television News.
Innocent will be on the ground bringing us updates on the president's visit. Well, back here in Nigeria, in Lagos specifically, the state governor, Babajide Sanwo-Olu, has announced the ongoing construction of the Lagos Central Food Security System, Logistics Park, and the 500-bed psychiatric hospital being built in Epe area of the state will all be completed by next year. The governor made the comment as he paid a working visit to the project site, said to be the largest in Africa's continent. It is expected to solve the issue of food insufficiency and address mental health cases in Lagos State. He says a central food security system and logistics park will be ready in the second quarter of 2025, while the psychiatric hospital will be ready by fourth quarter of next year.
The Lagos State Governor Babajide Sanwo-Olu begins his assignment for the day at the ongoing construction of the Lagos Central Food Security Systems and Logistics Parks at Ketu Erenyun-Ekpe. The project, initiated about 5 years ago by the current administration, is sited on over 200 hectares of land in Ekpe area of the state, and it is projected to be Africa's largest food hub when completed. After going round the project site, the governor moves into one of the facilities with his team, where the project contractor explains the progress of work as well as the challenges slowing down the project.
So we are having challenge supply of cement to this project. Averagely, we batch about 600 cubic a day, which will require about 12 to 14 trucks of cement every day. You can see the road that we are doing. They are all rigid pavement, 250 road everywhere. And the reason is very simple. You have heavy trucks flying this road every day all around the complex. We can only plan to ensure that we have something that can last the next 50 years and not give the project any challenge.
Governor Sanwo-Olu says the idea behind the project is to make Lagos food secured and will be delivered by the second quarter of 2025.
Lagosians deserve things like this. Lagosians deserve projects like this. I want to say that it's part of our vision. When we started, I would say we had an agricultural food security vision. This was one of the things that we met. And we've changed the narrative of the ministry from just being Ministry of Agriculture to Ministry of Agriculture and Food Systems. Because any agriculture without food, we're just deceiving ourselves.
Next up is the ongoing construction of the 500-bed psychiatric hospital, also in Ketu Erenyun-Ekpe area of Lagos State. The project, under the supervision of the State Ministry of Health, is currently at 50% completion stage and will help address mental health issues in the country.
It's a massive institute which is sitting on about 25 hectares of land, right? So it will be an end-to-end, psychiatric center. We believe that this aspect of health delivery is equally important. We believe that we have seen enough health challenges in terms of mental health issues, and we need to, make a classic case, of this and make sure that it's first in class, the best that people can come in, come for psychotherapy, psycho-rehabilitation, and get well in a serene and in a very decent environment.
The working visit is rounded off at the Isimi Lagos, a new tourist site in Ekpe, expected to boost the tourism potential of Lagos State.
Well, Christmas is here. If you haven't smelt it, you haven't felt it, then maybe the Santas in Germany might help you remember that we are in the season that marks the end of the year. They're all gathered, however, at the Brandenburg Gates, where they began the countdown to their big night, December 24. Germans traditionally celebrate Christmas on that day, and the Berlin Santa headquarters has provided rental Santas for the past 20 years. Families can book a Santa from 65 euros, who then visits the homes to hand out Christmas presents for the children. If an angel accompanies a Santa, the fee goes up to 96 euros, and if a Santa is with a long-term experience, that will cost you 85 euros. According to the head Santa, Andreas Pensky, the service is so popular, he does need more Santas to meet the demand, because it's hard to attract new recruits at the moment. I guess everyone wants to be on the receiving end of Santa's largesse. That's the world today. Wonder how much it will cost him to get to Nigeria. I'm Amarachi Ubani.